Hi, my name's Eric. I'll be reading you selections from the e-edition of today's Cape Cod Times. Today's date is Monday, February 9th, 2026, Black Monday, after the Patriots shellacking yesterday by the Seattle Seahawks. Very frustrating game to watch, especially if you like offense from New England. But I'm sure most of you already know those results. You may not know the weather, though, and that's what we'll start with today. Across the Cape and Islands, not as cold. There's some sunshine expected today, a high of 28. Not exactly getting above freezing, but it is getting warmer than it has been. 13 degrees the expected low tonight, with clear to partly cloudy and cold weather. Tomorrow, Tuesday, considerable clouds expected, high of 31, low of 25. On Wednesday, mostly cloudy, high of 38, a low of 26. On Thursday, mostly cloudy, high of 34, a low of 26. And on Friday, times of clouds and sun, a high of 38, a low of 26. So we're coming out of this cold snap basically starting tomorrow, but then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is when it really does warm up enough so that some of the snow will just go away, and you may not be looking out at, and having to fumble across and through snowbanks. Hopefully some of that will be gone soon. Now heading to the front of the paper, where the lottery results used to be kept, and we read these because, well, somebody asked for them. If there's something you would like read to people who are blind or print disabled, you can email us at info@audiblelocalledger.org or call us at 508-539-2030, and we'll consider reading it. And if you miss any of the information that we share in our readings, you can always go to audiblelocalledger.org, and it's a fully disability compliant website. You can click on the Listen tab, and under All Reads to the Blind, we have 150 chronologically rotating postings there. So they're in order. The most recent are at the top, and that's where you can catch up on anything that you might have missed. We also keep a wide variety of periodicals and literature up there for your listening pleasure, as well as our shopping guides are posted there on Saturday for our noon broadcast of 2 hours worth of supermarket shopping guides, and at 11 a.m. on Sunday, the same broadcast. All of that's free for people who are blind or print disabled at audiblelocalledger.org. From masslottery.com, the numbers game results for yesterday, Sunday, February 8th of 2026. The results were in the midday drawing numbers 9572. Yesterday's midday drawing in the numbers game in the midday 9572. In the evening drawing last night of the numbers game, the results were 0704. Again, last night's numbers game results for the evening drawing 0704. Good luck to all who play, and remember us if you win. From the front page of today's Cape Cod Times, one card, 1 million checkouts. Clams Libraries Have Big Digital Year by Heather McCarran. A reader on Cape Cod can borrow a novel at midnight, queue up a documentary before breakfast, or peruse the latest issue of The New Yorker without ever leaving the house. In 2025, that everyday convenience added up. For the first time, the CLAMS, C-L-A-M-S, library network surpassed 1 million digital checkouts in a single year. CLAMS, which stands for the Cape Libraries Automated Materials Sharing Network, connects 38 public libraries across Cape Cod and the islands, making it possible for patrons to borrow materials from a shared collection using one library card. While the network is long known for its physical books and in-person service, its digital side has grown steadily. The network's one of 18 library systems worldwide that reached the 1 million digital checkouts milestone last year, according to Libby, a leading library reading app, which is based on data from Libby, the reading app Sora, and the video streaming app Canopy. Globally, readers borrowed more than 820 million digital titles in 2025. That's a 10.9% increase over 2024, with streaming video also hitting record levels. On Cape Cod, Clams reported that 490,826 ebooks were checked out over the course of 2025, in addition to 410,885 e-audios and 153,749 e-magazines. And that growth didn't happen by accident. Promoting these offerings is key, said Cotuit Library Director Autumn Hassett. As a librarian and book nerd, it's easy to forget that not everyone knows about digital offerings. Promoting digital literacy. Cotuit began a digital literacy initiative in the summer of 2024, helping patrons get comfortable with online borrowing. The library offers 4 one-on-one tech help sessions each week where patrons can set up on Libby or Canopy, a video streaming app, and learn how to browse and download content. Those sessions are promoted through newsletters and social media, often along with recommendations for specific titles. We also promote Libby ebooks and audiobooks almost daily, especially when we have new card holders come into the library, Hassett said. Use is spread across formats. Ebooks and audiobooks remain especially popular, aided by borrowing reciprocity across Massachusetts. Digital magazines are gaining popularity, with Hassett noting rising interest in titles like The New Yorker. Streaming video through Canopy is also frequently used. The pattern plays out in libraries across the Cape. In Falmouth, Library Director Brian Stokes said the trend has been building for years. I think we've seen steady growth in digital formats for at least a decade, but things really took off during the pandemic, and that increased interest has been sustained ever since, Stokes said. Devices get easier to use, selection grows, and folks are just getting more comfortable with the formats that are available to them. Falmouth has seen particularly strong growth in e-audiobooks, which Stokes said made a lot of sense as you consider how rare it is to find a CD player these days. Library directors say digital borrowing isn't limited to any single group. Hassett said patrons use digital collections for travel, seasonal living, and accessibility features. Some, she said, switch entirely to digital. You'd be surprised. So many patrons are taking advantage of digital collections for a variety of reasons. It's easier to carry an e-reader than a stack of books on a plane, and they can continue to support the library even as a snowbird. More accessible reading options like increased font size and the Amazon dyslexic font, she said. Hassett noted she mostly runs into patrons who have switched to digital and can't go back to print versus patrons who are resistant to digital. And Stokes echoed that shift. I think we're past the point of digital adopters being a niche group, he said. It's a format that appeals to all demographics. For people who can't get to a library building easily, digital content offers something the physical library building cannot. Certainly, for folks who might have trouble getting into the library to browse physical collections, these resources provide a level of access that's off the charts compared to what would have been available even a decade ago. That said, I think most library users simply enjoy these services, and the formats they provide as another layer of value that they get from the library, Stokes said. That's just it. It's 24/7 instant access, Hassett said. Sure, there are holds and wait times, but you can usually find something. If you add the partner networks and are tech savvy to place holds, you'll always have something to read. Behind the scenes, the rise in digital activity comes with challenges, including the high cost of digital licensing. Hassett said electronic materials can cost libraries 3 to 5 times what a patron may pay for the same title to read on a Kindle, and that libraries license content rather than owning it. We only have so much budget dedicated because physical books are still circulating. At the Cotuit Library, 2025 saw about a quarter of the budget spent on digital materials, but Hassett noted that's because our budget is capped. If we redirected the budget, I'm sure that would go up, she said, but we still need to purchase physical books. Stokes noted that pricing practices can be especially tough on smaller libraries, but there are flexible acquisition models that help libraries respond to spikes in demand without long-term commitments. Still, the million checkout milestone reflects something more meaningful than just a growing preference for the digital format. The Cape is such a stronghold for the core values that public libraries represent. Free access to robust collections for everyone, with as few barriers as possible, Stokes said. Surging use of digital formats simply shows another way that people are using the amazing libraries in our region, and those libraries are ready and willing to adapt to the prevailing preferences of the moment. For Hassett, it's not all about choosing one format over another. I don't know what book borrowing will look like in 50 or 100 years, she said. You can't deny the feeling of holding a good book in your hands. At the same time, I love the convenience of a Kindle when I'm on the beach or cooking. It's a balance, and I'm here for the ride. The next local story on the front page of today's Cape Cod Times, dated February 9th. New Falmouth Police Station size questioned, by Heather McCarran. Plans for a new Falmouth Police Station are moving along rapidly, with the Police Station Advisory Committee unveiling a design that officials say balances public access, police operations, and long-term community needs. But questions of project size, cost, and potential traffic problems have been raised. Proposed for 100 Brickkiln Road, the roughly 45,000 square foot project would replace the town's existing police station on Main Street. Estimated cost is around $60 million. At a February 2nd public forum, the advisory committee and project manager Matt Salad of Tecton Architects reviewed two possible layouts for the site, each analyzed for cost efficiency, security, and functionality, and revealed the preferred plan they are advancing. Both options, which are among 5 initially considered, include public parking, secure staff parking, an impound lot, recreation space, and space reserved for future police needs. The first option oriented the building directly toward Brickkiln Road, with public parking in front, staff access routed behind the building into a secure lot with 88 spaces. The plan also included a separate, prefabricated outbuilding for maintenance and storage functions, a cost-saving measure intended to reduce the size and expense of the main station, Salad said. The second option, which is the preferred plan, shifts the building's primary orientation away from Brickkiln Road and toward a newly created internal roadway that will connect to Route 28. Public parking, with 63 spaces, would be located to the north and the west of the station, while staff parking, the impound lot, and outbuilding would sit closer to Brickkiln Road, screened from view by existing topography and trees. The site, former home of the Cape Cod Drive-In and the T-Ticket Airport prior to that, will also accommodate a lift station for a water main project and recreational space for town sports fields. It also includes reserved space for a possible freestanding indoor firing range, though it's not included in the current project. The chosen plan, said Salad, preserves more open space for recreation in the future. Voters approved $5.15 million at the November town meeting for initial planning and permitting, through borrowing and capital improvements allocations that will not disturb the tax rate. The current police station, Chief Jeffrey Lurie told attendees, is about half the size of the proposed building and no longer meets operational demands. We're basically splitting at the seams there, he said. He described overcrowding, limited electrical capacity, and a lack of space for equipment, training, and staff as ongoing challenges. There's a line waiting for the restroom, Lurie quipped. I mean, this is the reality. We need to get out of there. The new station, he said, is designed to support training programs, community events, and staffing needs for decades to come. Voters in the neighboring town of Mashpee approved a $37 million construction project for a new police station in April. There's support, but with reservations. Resident Richard Doobie voiced strong support for the police department while questioning whether the proposed size and cost could jeopardize voter approval. I'm all in favor of a new facility, he said, but added $60 million for a new police station is just so over the top as far as both square footage and costs are concerned. Doobie asked whether the project could be built in phases to reduce the initial financial burden on taxpayers, But Salad said, while phasing may seem appealing, it often costs significantly more over time. The value of the dollar of construction goes down every single year, he said, explaining that a future expansion could ultimately cost more than building the full facility now. Lurie noted he has seen other communities outgrow new facilities within just a few years because they were built only for immediate needs. He pointed at Westboro, where he previously served as chief, which built a facility only for today, and they're at capacity now. They've been there less than 6 years, he said. I don't want to do that here. I want to make sure we do this right and that we're stable for the next 50 or 60 years. Another resident raised concerns about traffic effects, particularly near Oxbow Road, that was described as frequently backing up. Town officials said no new traffic signals are currently proposed, but a traffic consultant is reviewing safety and signs needs on the Route 28 side of the site. Officials said that patrol vehicles are typically already deployed throughout the town and that staggered shifts reduce concentrated traffic leaving the station at any one time. Unlike a fire station, a police department doesn't leave all at once, so to speak, Salad said, so it's not like it's going to be a massive impact to the traffic around there. Advisory Committee Chairman Boyd DeMello also pointed out that movement in and out of the site, even onto Brickkiln Road, is going to be that much better than it is currently on Main Street, which is gridlocked all the time. Tax implications are yet to be revealed. Assistant Town Manager Peter Johnson-Staub said the project will be funded through a debt exclusion override. That will result in a tax increase. The town will likely be ready to present tax estimates at the next public forum on February 25th at 7 p.m. at the Senior Center at 780 Main Street. He said officials are exploring ways to reduce the burden through existing stabilization funds. Johnson-Staub and DeMello emphasized public engagement will continue with at least 2 more public forums planned after February 25th and monthly updates to the Select Board through November. We want community input, DeMello said. We're moving into a neighborhood, and we want to be good neighbors with everyone, so we want to hear what they have to say and feel about the project. Construction funding is expected to be considered at a fall town meeting, followed by a ballot question. All in all, if everything gets approved, we're looking to start construction on the parcel in March of 2027, he said. Keeping it local, we move to the Cape and Islands section of today's Cape Cod Times, dated February 9th, Monday. Cape Cod preps for herring runs with call for volunteer counters, by Heather McCarran. On a still April morning, one of the most important things happening on Cape Cod is easy to miss unless you're really looking. No crowds, no signs, just narrow ribbons of water where silver flashes push upstream. Muscle and instinct carrying river herring from the salt water back to the ponds and wetlands where their lives began. For decades, those fleeting migrations have told a quiet story about the health of the Cape's ecosystem. Now local researchers and conservationists say the story needs more listeners. The Association to Preserve Cape Cod is recruiting volunteers for the 2026 River Herring Count season, a citizen science effort that relies on something everyone knows how to do: count. All it requires is people willing to show up consistently, watch carefully, and write down what they see. The commitment's not a heavy lift, but the payoff is anything but lightweight. 10 minutes at a run a few times a week adds up to information we can use to track the run, to spot problems and see whether restoration work is paying off, said Mike Palmer, an ecologist at the APCC who coordinates volunteer monitoring across the region. The counts help build a picture of when herring runs begin, peak and fade, and whether waterway restoration is helping the fish make it past road crossings, culverts, and other barriers that have reshaped Cape Cod streams over generations. The even bigger long-term picture can serve as an indicator of water quality and climate change as well. Why river herring are important. River herring may be small, but they're central to the coastal food web. They feed striped bass, ospreys, and other wildlife, and their annual migration to home ponds moves nutrients from the ocean inland, supporting ponds and streams in the process. Alewives and bluebacks are the two species in Massachusetts coastal waters collectively known as river herring, according to the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries. They are anadromous, meaning they're born in fresh water. They spend the majority of their lives in the ocean, and then they return to fresh water to spawn. Alewives spawn in late March to mid-May, when water temperature is about 51 degrees, while the bluebacks are usually seen in late April into June, when water temperatures reach about 57 degrees. How many herring runs are there on Cape Cod? Many volunteers are needed to help count the fish. The Cape has 41 active herring runs, several of which are major runs on a par with runs on the mainland. Volunteer counts are one of the simplest way residents can help protect the fish that connects the ocean to our ponds and streams, said Palmer. Their observations matter because herring runs aren't the same every year. Affected by weather, water levels, temperature, and barriers in the streams. Over time, the data that volunteers collect helps researchers and conservationists see any trends, such as whether numbers are increasing or decreasing, whether their season is shifting, and where the fish may be having trouble, ultimately informing protection and management efforts. River herring have been declining in numbers for years, and because of this, there's been a ban on catching and fishing for herring since 2006. This applies to all, with the exception of the Wampanoag tribe, which is allowed to take herring for sustenance. Volunteer herring counter opportunities on Cape Cod. For the spring 2026 season coming up, the association is looking for volunteers at runs all around the Cape, notably Mill Creek in Sandwich, Trunk River in Falmouth, Mashpee River in Mashpee, Red Lily Pond in Centerville, Long Pond and Baxter Grist Mill in Yarmouth, Stony Brook in Brewster, Herring River in Harwich, and other locations listed on the organization's River Herring Hub. Volunteering typically runs from April 1st through June 15th, though timing may vary depending on the location and spring conditions. Volunteers provide their own transportation. They should be comfortable standing or walking on uneven ground and submit their counts through the association's web-based data entry system. Many volunteers aim for a few counts each week, but schedules are flexible, the organization said. Behind the scenes, the association is also working to fit observations into creating a wider scientific picture of the Cape Cod environment. In 2026, APCC's river herring work will focus on strengthening the monitoring program and continuing to support on-the-ground restoration that improve fish passage and spawning habitat, according to Association Executive Director Andrew Gottlieb. A top priority, he noted, will be improving recruitment and training of count volunteers so we can increase monitoring coverage and consistency across runs, ultimately improving the accuracy and precision of our abundant indices. The association is also planning to deploy data loggers at many of the Cape's key runs, building a more detailed environmental information to help explain why runs start earlier some years and later in others, and why the numbers fluctuate. In parallel, we'll continue refining our online monitoring dashboard to provide near real-time run information that better supports local run coordinators and in-season management, Gottlieb noted. Restoration efforts are underway. Monitoring, he said, is only one piece of the work. While monitoring is essential, we'll also keep advancing restoration efforts that remove barriers and improve fish passage through river and bog restoration work on the Mashpee and Quashnet rivers, alongside targeted water quality improvements, including green stormwater infrastructure and spawning headwaters, implemented with local partners in multiple Cape communities, he said. The Massachusetts Bay National Estuary Partnership funds the program, which also partners with the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries and local conservation programs. Training for volunteers will be offered in March, with details listed on the association's website as they become available. The organization encourages those with interest to sign up early so they can receive training updates and connect with local run coordinators. For more information or to sign up, visit apcc.org/our-work/science/community. The other story in the Cape and Islands section, again, keeping it local, which is what we do here. Thick Pond Ice Brings Out Cape's Ice Fishermen by Steve Heslip. There's a saying, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. For a hardy group of Cape Codders, when winter brings snow and ice, go fishing. Fishing in the warm months is a form of meditation. Sending a hooked worm dangling on a thin line down an ice hole feels like survival training. The winter photo portfolio has grown large. The thought of making more felt like being trapped in Groundhog Day, the movie, as the thermometer read 0 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Thankfully, no wind, a new truck battery, and a rising morning sun made starting the day easier. The assignment called for pre-storm photos and a look at some erosion hotspots. The bomb cycle ocean storm, earlier predicted to blast us, was moving much farther offshore. Lots of wind in the evening, little to no snow now forecast. The sea ice had indeed grown thicker in the harbors along Cape Cod Bay, trapping boats at Sessuit Harbor in an Arctic scene when seen from above. No signs of life. I found action on Scargo Lake. Ice fishermen. Thankfully, the ice had a crunchy snow coating as I stepped out to chat with the chilly fishing crews. Ian Leonard was clearing slush and checking on his tip-up lines about halfway out on the lake. Inside his pop-up shelter, a small heater thawed out his container of worms, which had started to freeze up. He was setting up for the arrival of his brother and 4-year-old nephew Julian. The ice made a few groans as more fishermen ventured out. The 6-inch ice was solid, growing thicker by the hour as cold persisted even in full sunlight. The only fear, paying too much attention to the camera and making a misstep, walking into a fishing hole. Leonard's brother Chris arrived, dragging a sled full of gear, and got down to business, untangling lines, bravely bare-handed, before setting out more gear. I've had a long string of bringing poor luck to fishermen. The longer I stay, no fish are caught. As I was leaving, several groups told me the point was enjoying the outdoors with family and friends, braving the cold. Catching something would simply be a bonus. That sounded like a solid plan for surviving the winter of 2026. Just try to enjoy it. Keeping it local in sports, high school boys basketball, Cape Cod Academy cracks the top 5 by Adam Kirkchum. This may be repetitive because I've written about this in the past with different sports. Doesn't make it any less true. In the current system, it's advantageous to load with your non-league schedule with the toughest teams available. It always makes sense, but especially in a playoff format that rewards squads for playing a tough slate. A full half of a team's rating comes from this. I can understand if you don't want to get blown out, and that's your concern. It just makes more sense in the end if you can give your team that slight edge of experience over quality foes. It usually just helps to be battle-tested, and the ability to have an edge rankings-wise is also key. On to the Cape and Islands High School boys basketball rankings. Martha's Vineyard is number 1. They're 14-2, and they were number 1 last week. This team just keeps winning as the Vineyarders have now won 8 in a row. Barnstable is number 2. Their record is 11-4. They were ranked number 2 last week. You want to talk about tough schedules? How about these Red Hawks? 3 of their losses, 2 to New Bedford and another to Bridgewater Raynham, are to top 7 Division I teams. The Red Hawks also own a win over New Mission, the number 4 team in Division 4. Barnstable sits at number 30 in Division I, but that just speaks to the depth in the bracket. Number 3 is Upper Cape. Their record is 14-2, and they were ranked 4th last week. The Rams continue to impress as one of the most consistent outfits around. You love the way this team competes on both ends of the floor. I've said it before, but this team has great length, and I think could really compete with anyone in the coverage area. The team checks in as the number 10 team in Division 4. Falmouth is ranked number 4. Their record is 12-3, and they were ranked number 3 last week. Only a slight drop for this team after a loss to a Barnstable team that the Clippers beat earlier in the season. Coach Paul Lundberg's done a great job of getting this team ready every night. The Clippers now find themselves as the number 11 team in Division 3. That should be good enough for a home game, so the Clippers are good there. And finally, number 5 is Cape Cod Academy. They were 9-7 on their record, and they were not rated last week. This is the first time Cape Cod Academy has bumped into the top 5 this season, but they have some staying power. With Mike Berry and freshman Cody Tolley, you have the type of combination of C and skill that you don't always see in the high school game. Keep an eye on junior Chris Bartolome, too. This is a Seahawks team that's only ranked number 26 in Division 5, but could pull out an upset or two. Honorable mentions, Mashpee with 9-8. This is a team that was very close to making the top 5 cut. The Falcons have been one of the top stories of the season and is looking good as the number 14 team in Division 4. Monomoy is an honorable mention at 7-9. The Sharks dug an early hole for themselves. This team can defend and has good inside-out play on offense. Nantucket is 9-5. This team had a midseason slump. The Whalers have since found their mojo and are playing well. And St. John Paul II is an honorable mention at 10-7. The Lions are currently slated at number 40 in Division 5. This is still a team to watch and can stack up points on you. We're at the midway point, just a little bit past the midway point in our reading. Regular listeners are aware it's at this stage that we move to a different kind of local news, the obituaries and death notices listed in that day's Cape Cod Times. And in today's Cape Cod Times of February 9th, the first obituary is of John Archibald Murray of Hingham. Following a brief illness, John Archibald Murray, born April 10, 1943, entered heaven in the morning hours of January 8th while under hospice care in Hingham. He is survived by his wife of 59 years, Anne Murray. Raised in Summit, New Jersey, John graduated from Summit High School, class of 61. He graduated with honors from Brown University, where he met fellow student Anne. After graduating from the Coast Guard, OCS, John proudly served 3 years, thank you for your service, Mr. Murray, Yakutak, and as a controller of search and rescue operations in the Atlantic Ocean while stationed on Governor's Island in New York. John enjoyed a 30-year career in business, finance, administration, and strategic planning at various international public accounting firms and public corporations, including PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, the Dexter Corporation, and Moore Medical Corporation. He earned a degree from the Harvard Business School Advanced Management Program and later served as church administrator at Valley Community Church in Avon, Connecticut. After retirement, John and Ann moved to Cotuit. Always motivated to improve things, John delighted in everything from creating and implementing new accounting systems to designing and building home improvements to tweaking and or changing sails to make sailboats go faster. He was trusted by all who knew him and was often consulted for financial advice or project help. John enjoyed sailing from an early age in Cotuit skiffs and later with Anne on their 33-foot sloop, Shearwater. They enjoyed exploring the ports and waters of southern New England with friends and family as guests on board. John's passing leaves a void in the hearts of those who knew and loved him. A memorial service will be held on June 20th in Cotuit. In lieu of flowers, any contributions may be made to the Cotuit Federated Church, the Salvation Army, or a charity of one's choice. The next obituary is of John Gwynn of Pecasset. John Gwynn of Bourne passed away peacefully with family at his bedside at the age of 97 on February 6th. He was born in Boston in 1928, and John enlisted in the Army after graduating from Newton High School in 1946. Thank you, Mr. Gwynn, for your service. Upon his return from duty in Italy, he received his mechanical engineering degree from Northeastern University and began his engineering career with positions at Barry Controls, Johnson Controls, and Robert Shaw. In 1970, he started his own company, John B. Gwynn, Inc., and formed a successful career in the electronic and pneumatic control industry until his retirement in 1991. Among the many blessings of John's life was the blessing of two amazing partners. He married Mary, née Gwynn, in 1954 and faithfully faced the heartbreak of her passing in 1970. Then John married Sarah Diskin Gwynn in 1983, and they have enjoyed over 40 years of wonderful moments and memories of golf, tennis, and get-togethers with family and friends in their homes in Milton, Katomet, Pocasset, and Naples, Florida. John was preceded in death by his first wife, Mary, and is survived by many family and friends. A Mass will be held at 11 a.m. on this Wednesday, February 11th, at St. Elizabeth Seton Church, 481 Quaker Road in North Falmouth. In lieu of flowers, any donations can be made at St. Jude's Research Hospital, 501 St. Jude Place in Memphis, Tennessee, 38105, or to the Bourne Conservation Trust, P.O. Box 203, Katomet, Mass. 02534. The final obituary in today's Cape Cod Times is of Scott E. Johnson of Cotuit, who passed on February 2nd. Born October 2nd, 1976, Scott grew up and lived his whole life in Cotuit. He attended Barnstable schools and graduated from Cape Cod Tech. Scott worked as a master auto mechanic. He was hardworking, he had a great sense of humor, and was well liked amongst his friends and family. He was happiest working on old and new cars and trucks and loved hanging out with his friends. He'll be greatly missed. Scott leaves behind his parents and many friends and family. There will be a celebration of life service at a later date. In lieu of flowers, any memorial donations may be made to the Veterans Association or Wounded Warriors in honor of his late grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel C.E. Jenkins, U.S. Marine Corps. And that concludes the obituaries and death notices listed in the Cape Cod Times of today, Monday, February 9th of 2026. We've completed all of the local news in today's Cape Cod Times. We're moving now to the national news. On the front page, the headline reads, Dems say Clinton vote sets precedent. Lawmakers see path to future Trump subpoena, by Bart Jansen and Zachary Shemelly of USA Today in Washington. After a successful pressure campaign to compel former President Bill Clinton to testify about accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, House Democrats are threatening to subpoena President Donald Trump for investigations of their own whenever they regain power. A bipartisan effort in the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee to potentially hold Clinton and his wife, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in contempt for defying subpoenas was notable for many reasons. One is that it illustrated a lack of unquestioned loyalty for the pair in a party they once ran more than 2 decades ago. But it also gave a political gift to the party that currently has no control over the levers in Washington. A new precedent set by the Clinton depositions means the threat of a criminal contempt investigation will hang over Trump after he leaves the White House, and if Democrats regain control of the House after a future election. Sitting and former presidents have testified before Congress, although the events have been rare. Democrats now contend they have permission to subpoena former presidents under threat of criminal contempt, a vote Trump didn't face when he was out of office during the investigation of the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack. Democrats, including Representatives Dan Goldman of New York and Robert Garcia of California, have vowed to investigate Trump over his political sore spots, including his stricter immigration enforcement policies and his relationship with Epstein. Trump has said his immigration crackdown is vital to the country and that he knew nothing about Epstein's wrongdoing. Goldman thanked Representative James Comer, a Republican from Kentucky who chairs the committee, on social media February 3rd for setting such a clear precedent for compliance with a congressional subpoena. We look forward to using this same precedent when we take back the majority in November, Goldman said. The Justice Department has a long-standing policy not to prosecute sitting presidents, which was why prosecutors dropped 2 federal indictments against Trump after he won the 2024 election. Yet the threat of a criminal investigation would linger after he leaves office. Garcia, the top Democrat on the committee that subpoenaed the Clintons, said it was the correct take to realize lawmakers could threaten former presidents with contempt for refusing to testify. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Democrat from New York, warned the decision would have consequences for Republicans. That's their choice. They've decided to elevate congressional power in this respect, Ocasio-Cortez told USA Today. I understand that that is what they want to do. And also, once they expand congressional authority for themselves, they expand it for everybody. And that is their choice that they have made. The GOP-led House committee voted January 21st on 2 resolutions to hold the Clintons, both Democrats, in criminal contempt of subpoenas for information about Epstein. 9 Democrats joined Republicans in the vote against Bill Clinton. 2 voted present. 3 Democrats joined Republicans in the vote against Hillary Clinton. Facing a potential House vote for criminal contempt, the Clintons relented in early February and agreed to testify later in the month. The Clintons have argued the subpoenas were politically motivated because the committee wasn't also demanding testimony from Trump. Comer said the goal is to get the truth about the Epstein saga, find out how the government failed the people who accused Epstein of abuse, and unearth how he accumulated his wealth. This isn't about helping President Trump, Comer told reporters February 4th. This isn't about protecting President Trump. Ocasio-Cortez said her colleagues' vote to compel the Clintons to testify wasn't a political rebuke of them. Instead, it was about cooperating with Congress and respecting its authority. This is not about when Republicans or Democrats issue a subpoena, she said. It's about when Congress uses its legal authority and the extent to which we want to assert the power of that authority. To me, it's more of an institutional question than a political one. The lack of Democrats coming to the Clintons' defense, even as they faced criminal contempt charges that carry the threat of jail time, has underscored the pair's fading political relevance. Bill Clinton served 2 terms as president from 1993 to 2001, and his wife later served in the U.S. Senate, in the Obama cabinet, and then was the 2016 Democratic presidential nominee who lost to Trump. Presidents have testified, but not under pressure. Presidents have testified voluntarily before Congress, but subpoenas ratchet up the pressure and reflect a reluctance of the witnesses to appear. President George Washington testified before the entire Senate in 1789 about treaties with Native Americans. President Abraham Lincoln testified in 1862 before the House Judiciary Committee about a newspaper publishing one of his addresses before it was released. President Woodrow Wilson spoke with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee at the White House about the peace treaty with Germany after World War I. And President Gerald Ford appeared before a House Judiciary Subcommittee at the Capitol about his pardon of former President Richard Nixon. Former presidents who testified before Congress include Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, Harry Truman, and Ford. The Democratic-led House committee that investigated the January 6, 2021 riot had subpoenaed Trump in October of 2022 as a central player in the attack. But Trump fought the subpoena in the courts. Republicans regained control of the House, and the committee disbanded. The committee leaders, Representatives Benny Thompson, a Democrat from Mississippi, and Liz Cheney, a Republican from Wyoming, said in a joint statement in November of 2022 that Trump was refusing to do what more than 1,000 other witnesses have done. Final story on the front page of the Cape Cod Times today. Guthrie case highlights limits of tech by Stephanie Innes and Ndea Yancey Bragg. Data from Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker has helped shed light on the events leading up to her presumed kidnapping. But there are significant limits in how much data the devices can collect. Most importantly, for law enforcement personnel investigating a disappearance or crime, the devices can't be used to track a person's location. However, they can provide valuable information about heart function and cardiac events. For example, New Mexico officials said actor Gene Hackman's pacemaker revealed that he may have died nearly 10 days before his body was found. In Guthrie's case, a pacemaker app shows it was disconnected from her phone early on February 1st, according to a timeline provided by the Pima County Sheriff's Department, which would not affect the device's functioning, but would make outside monitoring of the pacemaker impossible. Pacemakers are small, battery-controlled devices that are implanted under the skin and prevent the heart from beating too slowly. Pacemakers trigger the heart to beat when it's time to beat, according to Amy Kleinhans, lead nurse practitioner for the electrophysiology group and clinical manager for the device clinic at Honor Health Heart Care, which remotely monitors about 4,800 pacemakers. Kleinhans spoke with the Arizona Republic, part of the USA Today network, about pacemakers and how they work, but not about Guthrie's specific case. The purpose of a pacemaker is to fix a low heart rate, she said. The heart rate is too low, it's not responding appropriately to activity. So we put devices in that can kind of speed the heart up. Pacemakers can't communicate any information about a patient without being connected to a monitoring device, which is often an app on a smartphone that's within range, Kleinhans said. But even when a pacemaker is properly connected to a monitoring device or app, she said, it's sharing only certain information with a manufacturer or a heart clinic, and it's not tracking a particular patient's physical position. There's no locator on these things, Kleinhans said. It's purely a communication tool for the device, the pacemaker, to send us information. It sends us information. We can't send it information. As long as it's connected to an app or a home device, the pacemaker will alert clinics about serious cardiac events, especially if a heart stops beating. If we aren't able to get hold of the patient, we look for their contact people that we're approved to speak to, Kleinhans said. We'll even contact local authorities and have wellness checks done. Kleinhans' clinic has a connectivity list of patients whose pacemakers have lost connection with their apps or home devices, therefore have no data being transmitted. Kleinhans said her clinic has 4 employees whose entire jobs focus on ensuring device connectivity and addressing such problems. It happens frequently when patients go on vacation. The clinic will get a connectivity alert from the manufacturer if there's a disconnection, but typically not until the patient has been disconnected for 14 to 21 days. It does not stream in real time. I think that's a confusion that patients often have, Kleinhans said of the alerts. Even if it's app-based and it's Bluetooth, it's not live streaming. It sends information by exception only. The pacemaker must be in range of either a home box device that's paired with a pacemaker and typically kept at the bedside, or to a smartphone or smartwatch app in order to transmit the data to the clinic monitoring the pacemaker. If Guthrie's pacemaker is not in range of the device that's synced to it, then the clinic monitoring her pacemaker won't get an alert, even if she has a serious cardiac event. The purpose of remote monitoring is that it allows the pacemaker to send information to us outside of regular office visits, Kleinhans said. The pacemaker is monitoring the patient 24/7, and it's storing the information. Even if Guthrie's pacemaker can't transmit data, it won't stop doing its job to correct Guthrie's heart problems. Pacemaker would still operate even if not transmitting data unless there's a battery failure. Batteries typically last 5 or more years, and they do get regularly checked during office visits. The pacemaker would still function, and the pacemaker would still be monitoring them, Kleinhans said, but we wouldn't be able to get messages from their pacemaker anymore. However, even when the devices and their apps are working together properly, they're not a way to alert officials in the event of an emergency, Kleinhans said. When we talk to our patient and educate our patients about remote monitoring, we do have them sign a remote monitoring agreement so they understand, she said. It's not an emergency response system. It's not a life alert. If you have an event, we may not see that event for 24 hours. Stephanie Innes writes for the Arizona Republic, and Dea Yancey Bragg writes for USA Today. The next headline, Groups Warn Tourists of Immigration-Related Risks, by Michelle Spitzer of the USA Today Network in Florida. Several civil rights groups on February 4th issued a travel alert for international tourists traveling to the U.S., particularly in Florida. warning their rights, liberty, and physical security could be in danger. The ACLU of Florida, Florida Immigrant Coalition, American Friends Service Committee, the Family Action Network Movement, and Semillas de Colombia issued the warning, saying international tourists are strongly advised to reconsider travel to the state, citing immigration-related detentions that raised civil rights concerns. Florida is no longer a safe destination for international tourists, the alert states. When federal and local agents can detain anyone at any time without cause and without identifying themselves, everyone is at risk, said Tessa Pettit, executive director of the Florida Immigrant Coalition. The groups are especially concerned about international fans traveling to Florida for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which begins in June. International visitors must ask themselves if a soccer match is worth the risk of being kidnapped and jailed until God knows when, in deplorable conditions, by a secret police who is using racial profiling, judging people for how they look or their accent, and getting away with literal murder in the streets of our country, said Pettit. Such is the sorry state of affairs in the United States and in Florida. We urge the international community to be aware of the risks before setting foot in Florida. Soccer fans from around the world are expected to visit the United States for the matches, including 7 scheduled to be played in South Florida. The groups claim enforcement tactics threaten to place international fans and delegations at risk, especially people of color, visitors from Latin America, Africa, and Asia, and dual nationals who could be targeted or questioned without cause. The advisory urges travelers to exercise extreme caution, carry identification at all times, and register their travel with their consulate before arrival. Mark Pieth, a Swiss attorney who chaired an oversight committee on FIFA reform, urged fans to skip the World Cup. There's only one piece of advice for fans, he told the Swiss newspaper Der Bund. Stay away from the USA. You'll see it better on TV anyway. From the business section, analysis, Bitcoin loses Trump-era gains. Crypto market volatility, again, signals uncertainty, by Hannah Lang and Elizabeth Hocroft. In New York, Bitcoin could drop further after wiping out all its price gains since the election of President Donald Trump, as liquidity is expected to remain thin for the near future. Bitcoin's slump alongside other digital asset prices coincides with investor concerns about inflated tech valuations and the uncertain path of Federal Reserve rate cuts. This contraction has been underway for several months and remains ongoing, suggesting it's likely to persist for some time, said Thomas Probst, a research analyst at crypto data provider Kaiko. Reduced liquidity translates into sharper and more erratic price movements, he added. Precious metals and cryptocurrencies sold off heavily January 30th after Trump named Kevin Warsh as the next Fed chair, due to expectations he could shrink the Fed's balance sheet, reducing demand for Bitcoin. Digital asset prices have seesawed since, declining to close down 20% on February 5th before rebounding the following day. The moves have raised concerns about the outlook for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in the year ahead. The end of the year proved to be tumultuous. October also saw the largest crypto liquidation event in history after Trump announced new tariffs on Chinese imports, washing out liquidity that has yet to fully return. The flash crash, back in the fall, was this kind of pin that popped the leverage bubble, says Danny Galindo, an investment strategist at Morgan Stanley Wealth Management. The Trump administration's friendly stance toward crypto helped give Bitcoin a major boost last year, sending it to an all-time high above $125,000 in October. Still, Trump's introduction of pro-crypto policies in 2025 has not stemmed the latest price declines. Bitcoin fell below $61,000 on February 5th, its lowest level since a month before Trump's election. But some analysts have theorized that the worst may already be over. There are several things signifying that we're very close to a bottom if not having achieved it, said James Butterfill, head of research at crypto asset manager CoinShares, who added some investors might choose to buy the dip. Selling by so-called whales, individuals or entities holding 10,000 Bitcoin or more, has started to slow, he said. I think a lot of investors are seeing this is actually an opportunity rather than running for the hills, he said. Thin liquidity. Bitcoin's average 1% market depth, a measure of the crypto token's ability to absorb trades without significant price fluctuations, was more than $8 million in 2025, but it fell to around $6 million after October 10th of 2025, and it now stands at around $5 million, Probst said. That means that the amount of Bitcoin available to trade at close to the current price has been shrinking. So even relatively small orders now cause bigger moves than they did before October's crash. It's the trend in liquidity that's truly concerning, Probst said. Market participants are bracing for more volatility in the near term, said Andrew Moss, head of digital assets research at Jefferies. We see few bullish indicators that suggest we may be approaching the bottom, he said. Cryptocurrencies represent a small part of global markets, but the points of crossover between the crypto world and mainstream finance, including stablecoin reserves, crypto-related stocks, and bank exposure to crypto, have all grown in recent years. Bitcoin has become more closely correlated to equities in periods of market stress, making it more sensitive to macroeconomic and geopolitical developments, Probst said. Global equity indexes rose February 6th as investors crept back into U.S. technology stocks after a massive sell-off in the prior 3 sessions. The earlier declines were triggered by fears around spending on artificial intelligence. Bitcoin rose more than 10% above the key $70,000 level. The Trump effect. Bitcoin soared after Trump was elected president in November of 2024, as investors anticipated his administration would overhaul digital asset policy and fulfill certain campaign promises, including establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Trump himself, with his family, is involved in numerous crypto ventures, including an eponymous meme coin and a venture called World Liberty Financial that's led by his family. The administration moved quickly to answer the crypto industry's biggest request by imposing a new regime at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and passing a law to regulate dollar-pegged crypto tokens. But it's not immediately certain what other crypto-friendly measures might come. Bitcoin, in particular, was buoyed by Trump's campaign pledge to create a national Bitcoin stockpile. Although Trump signed an executive order creating a Bitcoin reserve from the cryptocurrency the U.S. government has seized as part of asset forfeitures, the government has not embarked on a Bitcoin buying spree, Galindo said. It was created, but maybe it wasn't this kind of big moment. Some of those people before the inauguration were kind of hoping for, he said. And with that, we've come to the end of our reading of the Cape Cod Times for today, Monday, February 9th of 2026, the day after the Patriots were drubbed by the Seahawks. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other. There's always next year. Remember our veterans, especially those we've lost recently. Bye for now.